Okay, so today I'll be talking about the devaluation of the US dollar from 1971 to the present day. So 1971 is a pivotal year. It was a year when President Nixon took us off the gold standard, and after World War II we had the Bretton Woods Agreement, and 1 ounce of gold was to be set at $35 an ounce. So for 1 troy ounce of gold was worth $35. And when Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971, 1 ounce of gold was $45. So for about $45 you could buy 1 ounce of gold in 1971. And to put this into perspective, a single family home costs about maybe $20,000 back in 1971. Okay, fast forward to today, to buy one of these it will cost you about $1,752 for 1 troy ounce of gold. Same amount of gold for more of these, so $1,750. So it would cost this much to buy the same amount of gold. And the price of real estate, the average price of real estate in the USA is about $350,000. So you can see that there is not a 1-to-1 ratio, but there is a clear indicator that since gold was depegged from the dollar, there has been a lot of inflation since 1971 to 2022. And let me demonstrate this in another way. I think prior to 1981, before 1981, we used to have copper pennies. So this is a copper penny. The composition of this coin is 95% copper, weighs about 3.11 grams, 95% copper, and I think it's 5% tin. There's some other metal in there, but the pennies after 1982 or 1982 and after, they're 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. So there isn't a lot of copper in the new pennies, basically. So the inflation got so bad that they had to take the copper out of the pennies and just turn the pennies into copper plated zinc pennies after 1982, from 1982 and onwards. So I'll be going into this in more detail in the next part. Okay, in this part of the video I'll be talking about historical overview of basically what happened to gold prior to 1971. Well, gold was technically money until 1971. However, average American citizens were not allowed to own any gold because of FDR's or Franklin D. Roosevelt's, or President Franklin D. Roosevelt's Executive Order 6102, which was enacted on April 5th of 1933. So from this point on, American citizens could not own any gold. So if they had any gold, they had to turn it in to the U.S. government. So this is what basically happened. This is the reason why people couldn't own gold, but gold was still money. And before 1933, before April 5th, 1933, people were allowed to own gold. They were, basically it was in the paper currency. So a $50 gold certificate, this was printed from 1863 to 1933, and a $20 bill from that period was backed by 30.1 grams of gold. This is from the periodic table. So in the periodic table, gold is called AU, silver is called AG, and copper is called CU. So this is what you could redeem for $20 from this period of time, from 1863 to 1933. And you had smaller denominations of gold as well. You had $10 bills or $10 coins, $10 gold coins, which was kind of like half of that, basically. So you could get about 15.04 grams or 0.484 troy ounces of gold for $10 bill. $10 gold certificate, we'll call it, not a bill. And we also had silver certificates. These were issued from 1878 to 1964. So this had about, actually I made a mistake here, 0.77 troy ounce of silver for one silver certificate. That's how much you could get. For one of these coins, a Morgan dollar, had about, it weighed about 24.056 grams, and it had 90% silver and 10% copper. So the amount of silver in it was about 0.77 troy ounces of silver. Sorry about that, I made a mistake here. Same with this, you can get 4 silver quarters, had the same amount of silver as one of these Morgan dollars. So you were able to go to the bank, or if you went to the shop, the cashier would give you silver coins in exchange for your dollar bill if you presented it to buy something, right? Let's say something costs 40 cents, then they would give you back 60 cents in silver coins, because the dimes were made out of silver, quarters were made out of silver, half dollars were made out of silver, and you also have silver coins as well. But the nickels were not made out of silver. Nickel was made out of mostly nickel. So yes, and I showed you earlier about a copper penny. This is a copper wheat penny. This was minted from 1909 to 1958. It was weighed about 3.11 grams, had 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. It had about 2.955 grams of copper, or 0.095 troy ounces of copper. And today's pennies, and after 1958, you still had copper pennies from 1958 to 1982. But these weren't the wheat pennies. They were still copper, but they took the copper out of it in 1982. So from that point on, pennies no longer were 95% copper. It was 97.5% zinc and 2.5% copper. So even that has been devalued since 1982. So silver was taken out of circulation as money in 1965. So after 1965, all the coins are made out of some type of cupro nickel. It's not silver anymore. It's not 90% silver and 10% copper. So silver was taken out of, was no longer used as money in the U.S. starting from 1965 onward. So let's look at the price of houses from, let's say, about 1900 to 1951. So the period from 1971 to 2022 is about 51 years, right? So this is 51 years. So the price of real estate was $5,000 in 1900. And in 1951, it was maybe about, let's check out the price of real estate in 1951. Yeah, about $7,300 in 1950. Okay, so that's not too bad. Let's put it into this thing. 1950, 1900 to 1951. 5,000 to $7,300 in a period of 51 years. And now we're going to look at 1971 to 2022. And the price of a home in 1971 in the U.S. average price was $20,000. Today, what is the price of real estate? $374,000. Okay. In 51 years, we're talking about. So how much did it go up in relation? Well, 4 or 6 times. See what the percentage of that is. Let's compare it with this. So from 1900 to 1951, the price of real estate went up 1.46 times, or 31.5%. From 1971 to 2022, it went up 18.7 times more. When gold was no longer money, and it went up 94.7%. So you just think about that for a second, of how much your money has been devalued since that time, right? So real estate is the best way to gauge inflation, I think, because we all need a place to live. And let's look at the price of oil for the past. In the past 100 years. Okay. So from 1971 was $25.82 for a barrel of oil. And just keep this in mind that the price of a barrel of oil is highly dependent on supply and demand. So if more oil is found and drilled and put into the marketplace, the price of oil drops. And if there's a recession, the price of oil drops as well. So you have to keep all that into consideration and not just look at the numbers. So we could look at how much it cost in 1971, $25 about. Today it's about $102 a barrel. About 4.08 times. I mean, there are 8 times more. See how much that is. That's 75% more from 1971 to the present day. The price of everything went up across the board. The price of food went up. The price of fuel went up. Everything. The cost of living basically went up. Let's see how much gasoline was. Okay, 36 cents. It's 36 cents. Today, let's see what the average price of gasoline is today. It says $4.68. That's the average price. So in some states, it may be more than that. Like in the state that I live in, California, it's about $6.10 or something like that per gallon. Other states, it's probably less than that. So it's just an average. So how much has it gone up in the past 51 years? So let's do the math. But it's gone up about 13.01 times. And the percentage it went up. Whopping 92.3%. So the price of gasoline has gone up a lot. The price of refining has gone up. Because the price of a barrel of oil doesn't always correspond to the price of gasoline. That depends on a lot of factors like how much oil is refined in the gasoline and stuff like that. That all goes into the price of for a price of a gallon of petrol. Or if you're living in another country, it would be liters, unit of currency over liter. So in the US, it's dollars per gallon. You lived in, let's say, the EU, it'll be euros per liter. So the units are different. So if you lived in the United Kingdom, it would be called pounds per liter. But that's a unit of measure in which you get gasoline, basically. So yes, everything has gone up in price. Even the cost of education has gone up a lot. Let's see how much college education cost back in. Okay, so college education back in 1971. Your nonprofit colleges, 1,930. Is that the cost per year or cost per semester? Let's take a look. In 1971, the tuition fees, rooms, board per year for a 4-year college was $8,734 in 2017. So I want to see what the price was back then per year. For 1 year, okay, was $394. Okay, now we're getting the true measure for 1 year. So 1 year could be 2 semesters or 3 quarters. That's how it's that's how it's measured. So I remember when I was going to college in 1995, a quarter cost me about 2,000, maybe it was about 1,500 per quarter, and there were 3 quarters, so it was about that much per year. That's not including room and board. Let's see how much it costs now. 2022. So how much does it cost now at a public university? 10,000 per year. Just look at that. This is not a private university. This is a public university, kind of like a something like UC Berkeley, um, something like a Cal State or Cal Polytechnic or something like that, or like the if you live in the state like let's say Alaska, it'd be Alaska State or University of Alaska or something like that. It's not a private university. This is just a public university. And the reason for this is because I think education was heavily subsidized in the 1970s to, I guess, 1990s. So it was cheaper. That's one of the reasons why it's so much cheaper than it is today. Um, I'm sorry, I screwed up. I think it was $800 per quarter, if I remember correctly. So I was paying about this much every year to go to school, to go to university back in 1995. And in 1971, it was 394. So even this has gone up a lot. So let's see how much it's gone up. Amazing. 27.26 times. Insane. This is insane. So as you can clearly see here, that the price of education is going up. And the reason why it went up so much more was because education was, I mean, it's less and less subsidized by the government over the years. So that's another reason why it's going up a lot. So I guess this is why a lot of people have student debt. For me, for luckily for me, I didn't have a lot of student debt because my education did not cost a lot. Not as much as these people, you know. So as a result of gold no longer being money, because today it's not money. What gold is it's just a commodity like copper, oil, bauxite, aluminum, um, cadmium, or anything else. It's just a commodity. It is no longer considered to be money, and it's not. People say that gold is money, but it's not money. And all the commodities have gone up over the years. Goods and services have gone up over the years. So the only way to really head yourself in this type of environment is by owning any real assets, whether that be land, you buy a business or something, or you create your own business, that's an asset, or you create some type of intellectual property. Let's say you invent something and then you get a patent for that or whatever, or you buy a plot of land and turn it into something productive. You grow food on it or whatever. You make a small farm, or you could, if you're a farmer, then your asset would be your farm, right? If you're a business owner, then your asset would be your business. If you're a real estate person, then your asset would be your real estate or whatever. So as a result of this no longer being money, the real gold is just assets, all assets. That's the gold, because this is no longer considered to be money. So this is why all asset prices have gone up over the years, and that's the only way you could really protect yourself from being having your wages garnished by inflation, because the wages really haven't kept up with the rate of inflation over the years, and I'll show you that right now. Average wage in 1971. This was average wage in 1971. Okay. Average wage 1971. The average wage today. Let's see how much it has gone up over the years. $8.23 times. $87.9%. So really, if you look at it with considering if you consider this with other prices or compare with other prices, compared to college, hasn't kept up. Comparing with the price of gasoline, has not kept up. Price of barrel of oil, I guess it has kept up, but you can't use crude oil for anything. It's got to be turned into something useful like refined gasoline or something like that. Or plastics. Compared to houses, has not kept up. So wages really have not kept up with rate of inflation. If you look at it in a very um, analytical way. So wages haven't kept up with inflation. Everything is going up in price, and I guess that's why a lot more people are relying on stuff like credit cards to get through the day or get through the month, right? So, in conclusion, so gold being decoupled from the U.S. dollar, which is the world reserve currency, so as a result of the U.S. Depegging from gold as money and turning it into a commodity, the whole world has followed suit. So in most countries, gold is not considered money anymore. So from that period on, from 1971 to today, we have seen a lot of inflation, and this is provable by the numbers. And basically, yeah, a lot of people have. Well, you see a lot of people have fallen behind as well. You see more homeless people than you've seen probably if you've been around since, if you're old enough to remember, you probably see more homeless people than you did in probably 1980 or 1990 or even the early 2000s, because I certainly see more of them around. And I guess the people who are down and out are becoming more and more apparent in our society. And you could see them, they're more visible than they have been compared to previous years. So, yes, inflation has wiped out a lot of people as well. People who don't make enough will have financial problems, and people who have financial problems will um, resort to alcohol and drugs, and that will eventually lead to a person becoming homeless or something like that, or losing their job. So, yes, it has definitely been bad for a lot of people, but some people have been getting wealthier as a result because the more the money supply is inflated, it's being, the larger share of the money is just going to the people who have most of the assets, you see. So that's why we have so much income inequality these days. So if money is more or less limited, then you can get this money out of the people who have a monopoly of certain assets by just taxing it out of them, right? But since you have inflation, that doesn't really work because everything just costs more every year. The money supply is inflated, and more of the wealth just funnels to the people who have more of the assets. So that's how it's working. So if you want to protect yourself and prosper in the future, just get more assets, okay? Anyways, thanks for watching my Ace 1000 KS.